Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, thanks a lot for attending. This is the Engineering Graphics and Design September exam paper. This is the memo discussion. The first part of it, I will explain the paperwork in terms of the memo discussion. And then thereafter, I will take a exam paper. It's not to say that's the exam paper that was written in the September 2021 exam by everyone. Of course, each of the teachers has got different, but you will see the parallel towards most of the exam papers towards the one I'm going to explain. So therefore, please stay focused up to the end, where it points out to you certain aspects that might be of help, or that might be of need for you guys, of course, when marking. This is now focusing on marking, and I go out from the standpoint that all teachers I've got all the confidence and competent in marking those marks, but still it often appears that some teachers doesn't know if the isometric drawing or if a perspective drawing, the lines aren't correctly 100% in place, but it is there. How you go about when the vanishing points, for instance, was determined wrong, but the principle has been applied. So that is basically where we're going with this. All right, so on the slideshow you will see Engineering Graphics and Design. That's market training standardization meeting that you will get. Then for first the trial exam marking standardization meeting, it's MSM, of course. Now I think the most important part is to go fair to all learners. Now this is the problem. If I go this route over here, you will see that fair to all learners, because you know the learners and you know what their capabilities are, and you know if you get this name, yes, I'm going to mark this one first because this learner knows his content, and the other learners that's always absent, that always trying to take chances, if you get his or her name, then obviously you start the marking process with an attitude. All right, so what I want to say is try not to look at the names of the learners. Just try to be fair and mark the scripts as it is. And yeah, it's very easier said than done, because most probably you will see that learners are making these mistakes, and you know it's this learner that always does that. So, and if you just glimpse for a moment who's the name or what the name is, then obviously you are there with that attitude again. All right, so that's the first thing, fair to learners. And then also don't rush through scripts. I often see teachers marking so quick and so fast just to get rid of this marking process, that they often get to a point where they make many mistakes, and they take things for instance as correct or incorrect because they're in a rush. All right, so that's very important that you have to go through this process, and then also spend time on accuracy. Especially for the learners itself, you have to be accurate in all the content, everything that you do. So therefore, you work with that. A teacher should have his set squares with him when he's doing the marking, to see whether or not the lines are parallel to each other. A teacher should also have a bisector, measuring the distances, making sure that you are in the process of doing it correctly. A teacher should also have a ruler close by or nearby to see whether or not the learner has measured correctly. And then lastly, also a protractor in getting the angles correct. And so, all right, always be fair if it goes to the learners and to the marks itself, and then also mark with the mistake. That is very important. Many teachers don't know how to mark with the mistake, because the learner has made the mistake and now it makes another mistake on the mistake, but it does it correctly from there further onwards. So you have to mark with the mistake in that regard. All right, and then also read through the memorandum each morning, or refresh yourself when you start marking, making sure that everything is in line and so. All right, and then also mark from the marking guideline at all times. You can't go parallel or outside the marking guideline. You have to be with the marking guideline, making sure that you are consistent with giving marks whenever you give marks for, and so on. And also consult the memorandum at all times. And if not, go to your HOD, go to your maybe the subject advisor, or whoever the case might be. And then also check the sequence of the scripts again for against the examination numbers, of course, and the mark sheets. Check whether there are candidates marked absent or not. And then also, if absent, remember that this was a provincial exam. You give a -1 to the learner although you can set up maybe a new paper or ask the subject advisor whether or not he has got a second paper, and then you can offer a second paper which will be basically on the same standard as what you will have in this case over here. All right. The ticks that we will use in marking, for a full mark it will be a normal tick. For a half a mark it must be a tick with a tail or an upside down V to indicate a half a mark, and then of course if something wrong, it's totally wrong. All right, the marker should go for red, and then obviously the moderator, he should go for green. And then each marker should have a DBE assigned or signed off marking memorandum. Now of course DBE is not involved in this case, so therefore we will go for a provincial signed off memorandum itself. All right, and then also the transparent copies and those type of things. Now, ladies and gentlemen, with transparent copies, whether if it's signed off by DBE or the Free State Department of Education or your HOD or whatever the case might be, the transparent copies helps a lot to check the accuracy of any drawing. All right, so if you place that on top of your drawing, obviously you will get much closer to much more accuracy. Now, it's very important, if you do the transparent, you can't just use any transparent, so please don't put it in a photocopier and then on the end it costs you a lot of money replacing the drum of the photocopier. It must be photocopy transparencies that you have to use. And then the next I want to point out to you is that sometimes when you do make photocopies, it reduces the scale. So therefore, before you make the photocopy on a transparency, you first have to go on a normal white piece of paper, and if they say that this distance or this height is 75 millimeters, you have to check it before you go to the transparency and make a transparent copy of that. So therefore, make sure that the scale is 100% to a scale of 1:1, or even better, just take a familiar dimension and measure it before you go over towards the memorandum itself. And then also by sectors, rulers, set squares, protractors, red pens, and those type of things are compulsory. Deviation of only 1 millimeter is permissible, so therefore the learner can go out 1 millimeter, but the moment it goes more than 1 millimeter, then obviously the position of the line is not in the correct place. All right, so it's not, we will get to more detail about that. Mask must be used to check the correctness of the accuracy of drawings. That will be the transparency that we said. Learners must show evidence of knowledge, although it can happen that you place your mask on top of the learner's drawing, and there coincidentally is a line on the transparency and a line of the learner falling onto each other. Does the learner show the knowledge? Is that line meant to be that line, or was it a coincidence that line formed in that position? All right, so content knowledge, what does the learner bring to the table, is important when you do a question like that. And apply principles of mark with the mistake, we said. A learner should be given the benefit of the doubt if there's something not very clearly visible in terms of quality of the drawing and so on. And use it by sector, ruler and set squares, protractor and so on, we said. All right, except for concessions, of course, that's basically referred to in the DBE drawing policies and those type of things and so on. No freehand drawings will be allowed, all right, and except of course if the question is stipulating freehand drawings from the substructure downwards, then you can allow that, so that's basically part of the question. But if a learner see he's running out of time and he all of a sudden want to finish this by saying, listen, I know my knowledge, but I have to hand in, and he's quickly drawing an isometric drawing or the upper part of the isometric drawing freehand, that's not going to count. That's not allowed, in other words. Right, so, and then exceptions of curves which cannot be drawn by means of a compass, that can be drawn freehand, of course. But if a follower, for instance, are in rest or is in rest for a certain period, for a certain degrees, that must be done by a compass. Right, you can't with the rest period with cams allow that the learner, of course, can use a freehand, for instance. All right, and then the other part is isometric circles must be drawn by means of a protractor, because there's a method to that. So therefore he must, not a protractor with a compass. All right, so he must draw isometric circles and he must draw the rest period of a cam. He must draw that with his compass in the process. All right, then of course the next benefit of learners, for every correct drawn line or feature, then from there further onwards, to ensure consistency when marking, of course, you have to work from your memorandums and so on. And then also paper results, a lot of skillful reading, and that's the biggest problem I can experience with learners, is that learners struggle to read. They don't want to go through all this of papers. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this comes to the point where if you set an exam paper, it should be according to the standard. I will talk to you about that just now. If you take, for instance, this type of question paper that you see over here, then the notes should always be at the top. Then, of course, you will have an area for an answer, so that the learner, if he reads through this, he should know he will get it either on the left in the middle in the name block, or he will get it here on the bottom. Then, of course, the revision and all those type of things, that should be in the same sequence at all times, or most of the times. All right. So name block should be here. This is a work drawing in the small, in other words. So therefore, and this is your question part, and enough space for the learner to answer, because this is all about the learner and the space he will need to do that. All right. Then, of course, if you do a calculation over here, a freehand drawing or something like that, it should be in the spaces provided at all times, at the more or less same spots, areas on the paper itself. Then on this question paper, very important, should you set up a question paper, should you provide a question paper to the province, or maybe for the learners itself, the layout should be always the same. Of course, the floor plan, and then of course that of the elevation views. The roof detail is on the left. The concrete may be swapped around at some stages, but yes, it's all on the bottom over here. Then the fixtures over here. Then you've got your wall plates and your covers, your gutters, and those type of things, information over here. Windows information is over here. Electricity is also in the middle of the page. And then, of course, this is the drawing indicating to you the room designations, and then also the features that you will get, which will be onto these parts over here. All right, so then, of course, if the examiner is asking for hidden details, show all hidden detail. There's no rule saying that you're not allowed to do hidden detail behind hatching. So this is very important, because you get a lot of time that learners lose a lot of marks when they don't do that hidden detail behind hatching. It is permissible, and it is compulsory in doing so. All right, so because the examiner asked for that. Now this one over here, I know it's paper 1 that we were going through. But if the total of this is up to 4.5, you can do cluster marking. In other words, saying that this is a cluster marking. So go back to the previous paper, or the previous slides. Say, for instance, hatching for this part has got 2 patches of hatching, or you can say that this upper part is 6 marks, or 6 half a mark, so it's 3 full marks. So if everything is fine and 100% on the positions it's supposed to be, then you can write down 3 for those 6 marks that you can see in that case over there. All right, so that is cluster marking, that is permissible. Then over here, and this also includes for other parts of drawings and also paper 1, remember that we work with this where that line is wrong. This is the answer. It's supposed to be, let's say, for instance, 25 millimeters. So that position is wrong. The learner drew it in there instead of over there. Then the position is wrong. He will lose a mark for the position. But now be careful, because the line that he has got there is because of the fact that it is parallel with that line. Whether if it's shorter, then in that case the position will be wrong. But if that is parallel to this one, and it's parallel to that, and it's parallel to that line over there, then of course the learner can still get the mark for that, and still get the mark for that, because he know the profile, and he know at that corner it bends in, and that line will be parallel with that line. So that is basically what it points out to you. That's the position of it. That is wrong, so therefore you give him 0 for that, but now still you can give him a mark for that, and you give him a mark for that. Why? Because this is parallel to that line, and that of course is parallel to that line. So the learner doesn't get 0 for that and 0 for that further onwards. He has to be acknowledged for the fact that he knows that these lines are parallel with each other, and those 2 lines are parallel with each other. All right, so therefore also the The second parallel line, that line is wrong. It's not on the correct angle, for instance. So that one is wrong. The position of it is wrong. This position is correct. It's the height, and that height has been measured over there. So it's correct up to there, and further onwards, the learner wastes his own time in doing so. But now, for that part over there, that line is parallel to this line. So therefore, the learner must get acknowledged for that part. In this case, this is subject knowledge. The correct answer is the line should stop at that point and not carry on. So therefore, he doesn't know that in that case, that line is wrong. So you can't say that is wrong and this is right, because the content is over here about all the line that goes up to further instead of has to stop at this specific point. So therefore, that specific line, because it's not broken somewhere, it's one line over there, is wrong because of this position that is drawn in instead of keeping it clear there. All right, and the same, of course, with this line going further onwards, and it's not supposed to go further onwards at that point over there. Okay, then, of course, this is the maximum mark that you can get. You can't go higher than this mark, of course. And then from there on, marker location must be visible. So, in other words, you can't just say, I'm not going to put that ticks in there. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, everything is honky dory, and you write down your 5 marks or 4 marks or whatever the case might be. So in that case, you must mark, you must make a marking wherever you are giving it at. And don't go too large, ladies and gentlemen. I see papers that is basically long ticks, and if at the end the learner can't see anything of his drawing because it's just red ticks all over the place and it's 50 millimeters long. So please don't make it too large. Just go small and make small markings wherever it is so that the learner can assess his mistakes afterwards still on his paper. Okay, and then of course you write the marks in that area over there. Now, if you do have got allocations of marks, in other words, everything can't be fit in here by the assessment criteria. It's too long. It goes all the way up here, so the examiner is breaking it up. Portions of it will be there. For the 4th area, portions will be there. The total, of course, will correlate with the total of number 4. At number 5, the total of number 5 will correlate with the total of number 5, of course, whatever the case might be. All right, so the point I want to make is you have to make sure that if you mark this portion, put the marks in that area of the learner's exam paper. If you mark this portion over here, put it over here in this area, so that if the paper needs to be moderated, that these things don't stand all over the place at different areas itself and so. Right, that's basically also in correlation, or that's also applicable to the perspective drawings and those type of things and so on. When you have to do any of those. Right. No mark should be deducted for line quality or neatness except for the specifically allocated or where it's penalty to be applied for the curve, for instance, and so on. So in other words, the neatness, the quality, line quality or neatness, what I want to say is if it's too light, it's not to say that the learner doesn't know that the line was supposed to be dark, because he might have run out of time and couldn't do the complete drawing. But if it's still there, it is fine. You can give him the marks for that. All right. But now, if it's a curve quality, then of course the curve quality should be not feathered. In other words, lines that are basically drawn as 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines in the process. And it also should be smooth going through the points. So therefore, that's basically what it's pointed out to you in terms of neatness. All right, but line, the last part of it is, of course, if it's a solid line and the learner make a dash line of it, then that should also be wrong in that regard. All right, so it has to be the correct line. But neatness, too dark, too light, whatever the case might be, you normally don't subtract marks for that. All right, not be penalized for unnecessarily without compromising the validity of the reliability and fairness of the examination. All right, so in other words, you can't penalize a learner for having extra work, for extra lines further onwards and those type of things and so on. That's not the part of the neatness. So in other words, the isometric drawing goes up to this point and the line was extended further onwards. Keep it out, leave it there. Don't go that route of it's not right there. And I know some teachers has got a perfectionist style in them, so try to try to ignore those lines extended too far. Right, once finished with the question, calculate the total, of course, write the total at the bottom and then encircle the total. This is basically here on the bottom. You just make sure that this mark, and then of course this mark for question 1 should be transferred to the cover page, the front page of it over there. So therefore you're going to constantly refer back from that one and make sure that it's transferred correct to that one. And then of course if you're done with the whole question, that's question 2, question 3 and so on. If a drawing is not attempt, for instance, you just draw a line through that part and write down 0. Of course you will take that 0 also to the front. And then also look at 6 and zeros and those type of things. Make sure that your 0 is a 0 and the 6 looks like a 6 and a 9 the same. And then also you don't use typics when you mark. Never you use typics on the exam paper itself. You rather scratch it out and rewrite it somewhere else, but you don't use typics. Right. Do not leave a section unmarked. And then once you're done with this, transfer it to the front. Obviously you're going to total this, and then from there on you're going to divide it. If it's 0.75, 0.5, 0.75, of course you will round it upwards to 62 in this case. And of course if it's totaled up and if it's marked by your HOD, if you do have got a HOD at your exam or maybe one of your colleagues, then these marks will be applicable and not your mark will be applicable. Right, and if the HOD sees every time you make mistakes and every time you do the same mistakes, he can ask you to remark question 3, question 2, or whatever the case might be. Right, now of course then you total it up over here. It's a new total that you will get to this point. Of course, if it's 0.25 or 2.5, yes, and then you're going to round it downwards. Right. Mark should be captured on the teacher's mark sheet. Of course, you will use your own mark sheet for that, and then mark should be transferred to the SA SAM's mark sheets. And then, very important, ladies and gentlemen, after an exam, we as subject advisors must get the results on EMAs and see what school is where and how much are the raw marks and all those type of things and so on, and where are we with that and what support we can offer for schools that are in trouble and so on. So those marks from SA SAMs must go then from there on to EMAs. It must be submitted by the school, of course, on SA SAMs, and then of course EMAs will give us some summaries of the marks of the June exam, for instance, and so on and so on. All right, and then we have to work from there further onwards. If a school does not go that route, then obviously it becomes a problem in getting all the answers ready and so on. All right, so if we go to the question paper now, remember this question paper. Okay, there's first a few things that I want to say before we go to that route. Grade 10, this is information I've sent to you so about 3 weeks ago. This information over here tells you that the grade 10s will have 12 course drawings and 1 control test. That's the test that they wrote in June. All right, grade 11, 13 course drawings and 1 control test, the test that was written in June as well. And then of course the last one will 15 course drawing and a preparationary exam. All right, so that is up to so far. Most of us has done paper 1 in the preparationary exam. We still have to do paper 2, and then these control test was written earlier this year. All right, so this is the weightings for low, medium and high order questions. So if I check a question paper of a school, this must comply with. Low must be 30%, medium must be 40%, and high must be 30% again, high order questions. If we go further downwards, this is now grade 10. I'm not going to go too much of detail into this, but this is your promotional mark, and it comes from all this PAT phase 1, 2, 3 and 4, 100 marks, and then at the test is 40%, the course drawings is 60%, total to 100, 100 and 200 over here for paper 1 and paper 2. That will give him 400 marks at the end of the year. That is why provincial moderation check the grade 10s and the grade 11 PATs as well, because this mark is compulsory. You can't just thumbsuck the mark over here. It must be done, it must be visible per learner, per name list when we do moderation, provincial moderation. This is the same as what we have with the grade 10s for the grade 11s, and then if you go to grade 12s, it will be basically over here. The course drawings 40, 60, 100%, then the PAT basically 100 marks, and then if you go to this part, paper 1, 100 marks, paper 2, 100 marks, and then paper 1 and 2 combined to 200 marks, 100 marks for PAT, 100 marks for SBA. This, of course, includes the examination preparation or exam. Now, you will ask, now what about the June exam? On SAMS, it will not calculate the June exam. It will only calculate the September exam to a final mark over there. All right, so that is the importance of this, and this is why it is important to let the learners write the tests, of course. All right. These are just confirming the assessment recording program that we do have. It's 5 course drawings for this term for grade 10s, for instance, over here. And then, of course, 1 course drawing, descriptive geometry still to come. CAMs still to come for grade 11s, but then 5 course drawings for this term. There's also a mechanical drawing revision on this term. And then, of course, for term 3, 5 course drawings, the preparatory exam, 60%. That has been totaled up, like we said, to a mark out of 40, and then from there on the preparation exam, 25% for the PATS, and then 50% of the final National Senior Certificate exam. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, this is basically it, what I want to say to you in this regard. So I'm not going to go any further on this topic. Then, if we go to this portion over here, this is your examination guidelines. The latest one is 2021. You have to go through, you have to familiarize yourself in terms of the guidelines, what it says, all the content that is important over here. So it's important to make sure that you are familiar with the content. This is for grade 12, of course. Only solid geometry, only interpretation developments, only CAMs, and only loci of mechanisms. Isometric mechanical, of course, and mechanical analytical, solid and solid of civil and civil drawings, work drawings, and 2-point perspective always there. It's just this topic, question 2, that has changed, but I believe you have read your emails in this regard. All right. Okay, so that is the guidelines. You must be familiarized with the guidelines as well. I'm going to go out there. If you go to the exam paper, now this is for the marking. Now remember that the first few questions over here will be low order questions. Then it will go to medium order where the learner has to calculate, will have to do some other stuff. And then of course the high order will be drawing in freehand, copying, and then also your more performed calculations, in this case for higher order where you have to do surface calculations and those type of things and so on. The other calculations was just measuring the length of the fence, for instance, and so on. All right, so I believe you can all read, but there are a few mistakes that I've picked up afterwards. The project number does not give a certain project number on this exam answer sheet. So if the learner goes and draw the drawing number, that can also be seen as correct. And then there's also a reference code. So you can also use the reference code as part of the answer for the first question. Right, so that is always where you stay humble for an exam paper that you have set up, because there can always be some problems over here. All right, then the width of the breach in meters. If you go to the breach here on the bottom, it points out to you 6 meters wide. So that's your answer for that part over here. What finishing must be applied to the driveway? Now, what the learners does, they will go to the new driveway, but they don't see any finishings. All right, so they have to focus here on the bottom over here, on this page over here. It points out driveway is to be loaded with 200 millimeter well-compacted hardcore with 50 millimeter asphalt finishing. All right, so it's all about the hardcore and the asphalt that are involved in answering that question. All right. How many new inspection eyes are indicated? Now the inspection eyes, ladies and gentlemen, are these ones. Inspection eye, and inspection eyes. That is new. Remember, there's an existing building, and that is not new, that is existing. And that is also inspection chamber. That's not an inspection eye. It's not a spelling mistake itself there. So please make sure this is not a new inspection eye. They're talking about the new inspection eye. So this is a new proposed house. So of course, your answer will come from that. Right. Then the shortest distance from Mesut Street to the proposed new house, that you can measure, that is Mesut Street over here. So if the learner goes from this position, that's the closest distance to the street itself, you see 35 meters, all right, 35,000 millimeters, but still is not at the street itself. All right, so then the built line needs to be added. That's another 4 meters or 4,000 millimeters, And then the pavement is also of 4 meters. All right, but now can you see the way the examiner is giving it? One is in meters, one is 4,000. So this becomes a middle order question if the learner needs to get to the correct answer. All right, so that gives you 35, gives you 39, gives you 40, 43 meters from this position, from the new proposed house all the way to the Mizut Street that you see over there. All right. What is the land use for the property to the north of this? Now, of course, the learner, this is also a medium order, should take a look at this. He should orientate himself. North is up to the top. And then, of course, if you go to the north of this new proposed site zone for place of worship. All right, so that's basically your answer if you need to go to this part over here. All right, so what does the line at 1 indicate? All right, now at 1, you will see over here, there's just a line over here. Now you can say for first that's a contour line, but if you go further onwards, you will see it points out to you that it's a 100-year flat line that has been pointed out in this case. All right, so therefore it's not the contour line itself, it is the flat line that is pointed out. It is not to say that that is a contour interval. All right, what I mean by this is by saying that your contour interval on this drawing over here is 96 meters to 98 meters. That gives you a difference of 2 meters. All right, so this is in between. So that is the contour line in between. And the sequence, the contour lines are basically those ones that will be in 2 meter, 2 meter, 2 meter, 2 meter differences. So you can't expect the learner to make this as a contour line because it's not part of the sequence of 2, 4, 6, 8 and further onwards. So in this case, that line, although skew, although free-handed, is basically the flat line itself. All right, so that's what it points out. And then the next question is at 2, what is that 98 tells you? That 98, of course, is the contour height that you will get in this specific contour line. You can see it's still a contour line, and it correlates with this one over here, and it points out to you the sequence as you go from there further onwards. So that's what it points out. All right, then number 3, I think it's the new question. It points out here on the bottom, it's a soak pit, and then on the top, it points out this specific point over here. All right, so that's the new soak pit that it points out to you by question number 3. All right, what is the depth of the feature in millimeters? So that's not what they ask over here. They don't ask the name at this point over here. They do ask the depth of it. All right, so now you have to go and search for the answer. Where do they talk about soak pits? Where do they talk about any information? This is general notes or general information. It could have also been there on the top of the name block. But over here, the soak pit depth is 2 meters. So in that case, it's not what is asked over there. It's what's the meters, the depth of this specific point at number 3 itself. All right, then what does a broken line at 4 indicate? All right, now that's straightforward. That means existing building, and broken lines, dash lines, means that you're going to remove all of that. All right, so this guy is done with his house. He's trying to build a better house and a new house. So he's going to get rid of everything over here. It's going to break down everything. He's going to break down the sewage line. So that's the reason why the inspection eye won't be counting for new inspection eyes, and all the driveway will also be broken up. So he's going to plan a new house. You can see he's improving his lifestyle to a great extent in finding that at number 4. All right, then what does the abbreviation ST stand for? That is for septic tank. I'm not sure. I don't think it's been pointed out here. That is the same as inspection I. That's the IE. It's also the same as RE. So that is basically the inspection I. What is the fall of the new sewage line? All right, so the fall of the new sewage line over here, it must be pointed out. That's the new sewage line. And again, it's not pointed out 1 to 60 or 1 to 40 or whatever the case might be. So maybe it's part of the notes over here on the bottom. And it says here, sewage sewer lines must be diameter of 100 PVC pipes, and the fall of it is 1 to 20 in this case, right? Then also, what is the height at the corner R? Again, if you go to corner R, which is over here, there is no height pointed out over here, although 96 is the height in this case over here. It can also be part of the question on the top over here, where you see that R and it points out the height of it at this specific point is 95. So this is a more accurate one because this has been done by the surveyor itself. That is in meters itself, so therefore that is 95. That's a very more accurate answer, so the answer should be 95 in that case. All right, corner height. Which elevation of the new house is viewed from the driveway? So therefore, if you go to the driveway over here, that's the new driveway over here. This is the one on the left-hand side, so we remember that north is going up there. So if we go to the north, this will be to the left of north, so that will be west, in other words. All right. And then they ask you questions over here. In the space provided, determine the perimeter of the area, and then also determine the total area of the stand itself. I'm going to go to the memo in this case, which is this one over here. This is the calculations for adding up the perimeter itself, and then of course the area's length multiplied by breadth. Then you have to take all the answers to meters, and then from there on you divide the two. And then of course if it's a triangle, like in this case over here, it's half base multiplied by breadth, or multiplied by the height, multiplied by the height, and that's your formula there. And then of course you have to calculate, you have to total those two answers to get to the final answer over here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is for this part of the question. Just remember a few tricks. If the answer should be in meter, the learner is getting marked for the meter mark itself, so it has to show the meter itself. And then of course if you go from there onwards, where show all calculations, then you have to write down the calculations, and it's always of good advice to say length multiplied by breadth, because sometimes the examiner is also giving marks for the learner writing down length multiplied by breadth. The other trick to the sleeve of the examiner is sometimes he's asking, for instance, for the perimeter. So what is the perimeter? Then of course you can go to your areas over here. This is the distances in meters, so therefore you can total up that. But then if the examiner is asking the length of the fence, then the learner should not go and just add up all those marks. He must just remember that the gate itself is not part of the fence, and the gate is 2.8. So once he's done with the perimeter, he should subtract 2.8 for the fence itself, because that's not going to, for the gate itself, it's not part of the fence. So that is what is important in terms of this question. Okay. Then the next I want to point out, question 2, is this question over here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is straightforward. This is grade 10 content. If you take a look at this over here, you will see it's a pyramid standing on the base itself. It's not leaning, it's not standing at its funny angles or whatever the case might be. It's on 45 degrees, and it stands next to a hexagon. So if the learner ignore the hexagon, that is a grade 10 content. And then if you ignore the square pyramid, this part over here is grade 10 content. All right, so this is a question trying to check the skill of the teacher, or the learner itself, whether we can draw all of these in the adequate time or given time for the learners itself. Very important, if a section line goes through a base on the bottom or at the top, it will cause a straight line at all times. So therefore, that is important to understand that. If I go to the memorandum, for instance, in this case, which is this one over here, it points out to you, if it goes through the base, it makes a solid line over there, a straight line. If it goes to the top or the base, in this case the top, it makes a solid line. And then of course it will go from corner to corner. So therefore, let the learner work out the exact size of it. Now again, if this was made to the wrong scale, for instance, if that is, say for instance in the question, let's say for instance 50 millimeters, and he does on 45 or 35, you can subtract 1 mark for the scaling, or if everything of course is 45, 45, 45 and 45, then you can subtract a mark for scaling, and then you mark with the mistake. So does the learner know the content of cutting it off there? Does he know it's a straight line? Does he know it will go from corner to corner? All those type of things. And does he know the direction of is 45 degrees, and then also the spacing? Now remember that the examiner often asks with hatching is pointing out 2 things. The first thing is, of course, the the position of it. Is it correct that the learner do the hatching in this area instead of the area that's been cut? And then the next is basically SANS compliant. In other words, it's not to say that hatching is a compulsory 45 degrees. So this hatching can be on 60 degrees, right? But at all times, the spacing between the lines must be SANS compliant. The type B quality that you get for these lines should be the SANS compliance part of it. All right, so that's basically the cosmetic part of it. In this case, the examiner is asking the cosmetics of hatching. But it can be on any angle as long as all the lines are on the same angle. That's very important to know. All right, so 45 is not compulsory, but teach the learners into doing it 45 degrees, because you can alternate between 45 directions much easier with your 45 degree set square rather than struggling with where am I now with 60 degrees and those type of things and so on. All right, so, and the second thing is that these lines are already on 60 degrees, so therefore it's maybe of good advice in going for 45 degrees. All right, so that's preferable. All right, so first of all, the given part is the red dots that you see on the bottom over here. Can a learner distinguish how to, or determine how to make a square? Does the learner know how to make a hexagon? And then, of course, going through the hexagon, that's the given part, and then cutting it off at this point and at the point is the second part of the knowledge that the learner should have. And then, of course, over here, the height of it, the section line went through the bottom. It doesn't need a left view to determine where exactly will this be on starting and ending on this line over here. So that is straightforward. That's not a big of a problem. And then, of course, the height. If the height is wrong, you don't give the learner the mark for the height. But if the angle is still from corner to corner and corner to corner, you still give these marks for the learner. It's just the height that is wrong. All right, the same with this one. If these lines are all there and all in place, then, of course, you can give the marks for that, but then the height is wrong, so therefore he's going to lose the mark for the height part of the drawing itself. All right, so that is straightforward. That's nothing strange towards this. You can make a transparency of this part over here, and you can place the transparencies on top of your learner marks, making sure that the learner knows what's going on. Just make sure that if that total distance or if the side length, according to the question paper, according to the question paper is, say for instance, different, then in that case it means that you will have to work out the question paper itself. I just want to go back to this part over here. This is your question paper. It points out to you that the side length of this is, for instance, 40 millimeters. So that is what you have to do. You have to comply with that. In this case, the examiner is also looking for the distance over here, 10 millimeters, and the side length of the pyramid was 40 millimeters. That's the first part of the question. So going back to the memo, this is what you have to do in terms of that. All right. If you make a transparency, make sure that that is, and this part is according to the question paper, 40 millimeters or whatever the case might be. Next question. I think this is straightforward. This one over here. Very important to know, if you set an exam paper, the centers of this branch and the main part should always be in line. But you are allowed for grade 12 level to twist this into a new direction or a new angle, and then from there on get some different areas. So it's not to say that it has to be symmetrically exactly the same, one part after the other part. All right, so again, the learner has to go with given. All right, so what is given to in this case? It's these two drawings over here, the purple part, or the magenta lines, the number 4s in other words, that is given. And then also if you go to the bottom, the top view in other words, on the bottom, that those marks over there is also part of the given lines. All right, so that is what was given to the learners. In this case, it's this question: does the learner have the ability to be able to measure the distances over there? Does the learner have the ability to make sure that this is on 25 millimeters? I know there's different techniques in finding this view over here. The easiest, of course, will be placing it in such a way that you can still get a right view or in a left view. In this case, a right view, because this will make it visible and it will indicate to you exactly on what point there will be, say for instance, your fold lines been going over this point over here and making it a bend point that it will go inwards and outwards from that specific point. All right, so that's your lines that is basically important. In this case, this examiner is giving me all the information. It is in line, so therefore it is according to the exam guidelines compliance. But now the trick comes into this part that has been drawn to a different angle. Right, this is 45 degrees, that is 45 degrees, but whatever is visible on the front part and what is not on the front part is visible is important over here. Look at from this direction, so I will see this part, this won't be visible, so therefore it makes a dashed line over there. All right, if I go to the answer of this question, that means in this case all the lines need to be extended to find those points, and then of course the rule applies in terms of, I used to say to the learners, if you take from the bottom and have a look at it from this point, I will see this line, I will see that line, and I will see this hidden detail line from the bottom over here. So those will be dark lines. So if I extend this line up to the end, I will go all the way up, and then from there on I will be able to find that as a solid line. Then of course the bottom line is this line over here, so therefore that will be solid. It will even go further downwards. In this case number 3 will also be visible. And then of course the line on the top, which is this line over here, is the line on the top that's also visible. So the invisible part will be those two lines over there. Alright, so that will be going straight from this point, going straight up to that line. That's where I'm going to see this line. At this point it's going straight all the way towards that point. If I go to this point, it's still coincidentally, it's still visible over here, so therefore it will be visible up to that point, and from there deeper inwards it will be a dashed line going all the way into this position over here. Alright, so that's what you will see, and then on the top, this is the top line over here, but now it has got a turn point. It goes around this point before it goes to this point, and at the bottom it will go around, oh no, it will go straight from this point towards that point. Alright, so that point is basically this line over here that you see. It's the hidden detail line, and it will go straight towards this point. So there's only two turn points at the top between these 2 points, which is between 5 and 6. There's a turn point. How far it is, if I extend this line over here on the bottom, it goes all the way up to between 5 and 6. So if I number it 3, 4, 5, that will be 5.1 towards 6. And that distance, 5 towards 6, should be measured up to this point to give you the turn point at that specific point. Like I say to you, you can also use the left view. So therefore, you don't need this view, and you don't need these lines, construction lines. You can also, the learner could have also done a right view in this case because of giving you a solid line over here. But now, if it does so, if you go back to the question paper, on his sheet, it will go into this area over here. So therefore, you will go into this area, which is not wrong. You can't penalize the learner for going into this area over here. So that is still basically the correct method in doing so. So that will be from the top view 45 upwards. So you will most probably go over this line over here to find the fold lines, to find the bend points or the bent lines where it will be bended into the next part over here. All right, so that is basically your answer. If I can go quickly through this, the number 3s will be basically copying, like I said, it over towards this point. Number 4 will be the front view. That will be copying it towards this view over here. So that's basically from the 25 marks over here, it's 14 marks. It's more than 50% just for copying. All right. And then the 12 marks over here, less than 50%, will be the way in finding these points, each one after the other one. Now, of course, the examiner could have gone one step further if it wasn't for the 2 questions combined, is to develop the branch or to develop the main part over here as part of another question that could have been asked in this case. All right, so I think this answers this point over here. And like I said, you don't need to do all of this. You can also go for a left view. Although the examiner never asked for a left view, you can have it in over here. All right, so that is question 2.2. If we go to question 2.3, this is the question paper part of it. If I go down to this part over here, this is standard. This has always been the same, and it's ironically, ever since EGD existed as part of assessment in exams, this never has changed. All right, so therefore most of it, 90%, is exactly the same as what we will have. Of course, it's a whole deck hall and deck, it's an open area for functions or something like that. 2-point perspective, the picture plane, horizontal ground line and the standpoint. Use the given information, determine and label the vanishing points, show the necessary construction, no hidden detail. All right. So if we go to this as part of the answer, I want to point out the following to you. The first part of it is the construction of it. All right, so now nothing needs to be constructed. If I zoom into this portion over here, this is the question. The learner is supposed to, 1, work from the standpoint outwards parallel to the sides of the drawing, which is the first point over there. Second, the learner has to go vertical downwards to the horizontal line, but remember the horizontal line can also be on the top, then it can go upwards towards that. All right. The horizontal line can also be lower than the ground line, but it's still the definition of going from there downwards from out the picture plane. Now, if this line is not parallel, and if this line is not from the standpoint, you can't get the mark for that. And the same with this one over here. If it's not parallel to the drawing, and if it does not go all the way from out the standpoint, it's from out the standpoint here on the bottom, this will also be wrong. All right, so that's the first mark. The second mark is going downwards to the vertical downwards towards the horizontal line, going from this point downwards to the horizontal line. That's your second line. Now, of course, if the learner went out and drew it from that point, does he know it goes downwards? Yes. Does he know it goes downwards towards the horizontal line? Yes. So therefore, then you will give the line for that. He's already been penalized for going too far with this line, if that was the case. All right. Did the learner wrote right vanishing point? Yes, so therefore you will give him that mark over there. If he does not write left and right vanishing point because it's asking for the labeling, then you don't give that mark in that case. All right. Next is, does the learner know that all these lines are basically disappearing to the right or disappearing to the left? Yes, he does know. So whether the drawing, whether the attempt of the learner was wrong or completely wrong, it doesn't matter. What is important is, does all these lines go back to the vanishing point, to the left and also to the right, of course? If it does, if that is all joining up to one single point, then of course you have to give that mark for the learner. All right, then the next is, does these lines go down to the standpoint, yes or no? In that case, whether if it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. If it goes to the standpoint, you give him the mark for that part. Does the learner know if it gets to the picture plane, the lines go straight downwards? Yes, he knows, so therefore you give him the marks at that specific point. All right, so in other words, what I want to point out is subject knowledge. Parallel standpoint going down of picture plane going downwards to the horizontal have been written left vanishing point, all the lines going to the left, all the lines going to the right, all the lines going to the standpoint, all the lines going vertically downwards from out the picture plane. If these lines going downwards from out the horizontal line, then it's totally wrong, because then you're going to have a small little drawing over here because all these lines were extended to horizontal and then went downwards, so he's not going to get that mark. But then still you can mark with the mistake further onwards. If the learner has got or determined his own right vanishing point in his own planet here somewhere on this question answer sheet, and everything still goes there, then he get that mark, but he lose the mark for the vanishing point, which is on the wrong spot. But all the lines are going there, so the learner cannot be penalized in terms of that. Now, of course, if the learner determined the vanishing points at the wrong spots, at the wrong places, then you can't use your transparency anymore. Right, so in that case, you will have to go back to the point where you can say, if there's no lines going out to the correct vanishing points, then in this case your transparency won't work. Then you have to mark with the mistake in terms of that. All right. Then the last point I want to point out to you: if a line does not touch the picture plane, you have to extend it. Does he know that? Yes. You have to take it downwards to the height, to the specific height. Now remember, that's the height. That's the height of the roof over here. So that goes up to there. That brings you for the mark over there at that point. And then of course that point will be disappearing to the right in this case, because you went to the left in this over here. You went to the left, and then from there on it will go to the height, and then from there disappear to the right. If the learner extend the line from there further downwards, he went out to the right, he got to the height of it, he extended to the left vanishing point, and then you chop it off at that specific point where it will be at this point at that point over there. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, this is for the first portion of it, the construction part of it. That's the 6 marks that you get over there. For the roof, if we go to the roof, this is basically this blue lines over here. The blue lines comes from, like I said to you, this point over here. Now, if this is not extended, if it's not been extended and went downwards, if it does not go to the height of the roof itself and then from there on to the right vanishing point, then of course the roof won't be at the right position. All right, so now it's only giving me 1 mark for that. So the second mark that the learner will lose is this mark over here, because that's going to be at the wrong position. All right, so the position of the roof is wrong, but now the learner knows from corner to the tip and corner to the tip, he knows that those lines going up there, so therefore you must give the marks over there, and then of course over here for the rest of the roof. All right, if I go towards the pillars and the walls itself, it's basically just straightforward. Again, if the vanishing points are wrong, then obviously the position of these lines will be wrong, but does the learner know from the moment it intersect with that specific point and go downwards, whether this is wrong or whether the right or the left vanishing points are wrong, whether this has been drawn further downwards, he does know that line. So therefore you can in fact see if the principle of taking these points downwards, the principle of the corner going to the standpoint is correct, the principle of taking it downwards there is correct. You've already penalized him for the wrong positioning, so therefore this lines will be not in the same position as what the memorandum points out to you, but he does know the knowledge, and you mark for the knowledge. So therefore that's the green marks that you will find over here, which is the green marks that you see in this case over here. All right, that's also including the roof. It points out the solid structure, so therefore there's no lines inside over here, although the inside line will be this line over here at number 3, which is this portion over here, and then that will be given from this point over here. It's the yellow line that's been drawn downwards. It went all the way to the ground, and from the ground line it goes through this point over here. All right, so it's not the outside corner, it must be inside over here. And then of course the inside of the windowsill, is basically visible, and that's where you get all these marks from. All right, so that's number 4. And that's basically the question or the answer. The last part of it will be the circle. This is a high order. Now at least the exam paper was set up in such a way that the learner can at least progress up to this point without compromising the rest of the drawing. So therefore he knows exactly that part is high order, and that will be 7 marks. For the circle, 10 marks. It counts 42 marks. So for 32 marks odds, you can say that will be the high marks, the marks that you will at least be able to obtain, and then the last 10 marks will be the higher order question in terms of that. All right, so that is basically why you set a paper in such a way that the learner is not depending on this for the rest of the answer, but that's the last option that the learner can go for in that case. All right, so that brings us up to this position. The last part of the question, ladies and gentlemen, I want to explain is basically the floor plan, the site plans, which is in this case all the information being given. The information is, all right, in this case, not always exactly at the same spot. The examiner could have made this smaller, but still the walls are, the windows and the doors are in this position. The elevation and the floor plan and all the information for the floor plan over here is on this point. There's just one mistake. The washing closet or the water closet, the water closet is not on this layer, unfortunately. So therefore, the learners in the English part of it does not know where exactly to find the water closet. But if you go to the Afrikaans paper, which is this one over here, if I'm not mistaken, it is this over here. You can see that the spool closet or the water closet has been pointed out to you there, but in the English paper, unfortunately, it's not been placed in this position. All right, so that brings us to the point where the learner should make a conclusion. The teacher should either give him marks for him for free, or he should work out the total of the question paper in a different way. All right, so the easiest way will give me, because the fact that it's a problem from the examiner, he can give the 2 marks or 3 marks or whatever it will count. We will get to that just now. All right. Then door 1 and door 2, the windows. It talks about all the abbreviations for the fixtures. The electrical fittings is also pointed out on this point. The roof angle is pointed out over here. It points out to you the roof truss information over here. It points out to you the foundation to the wall itself. It points out to you the size of the gutters and downpipes. This is the electricity part of it. Learners should know the symbols by now, and this is the room designations that you will get there. And these are, of course, the toilets and stuff, but what is important of this part over here is the dimensions. You can't make this wash basin higher than 850 divided by a scale of 20 or a scale of 40 or 50 or whatever the scale is for that specific drawing. So this must be, scales is basically tested in numerous ways, in plenty of ways in this exam paper itself. All right, symbols comes from grade 10, grade 11, so that is low order questions. Room designation, grade 10 content, low order questions. This is your low order, this is your medium order for a window or a door or something like that, and this part over here of the roof truss will be the high order question that the learner can get. Then the positioning of it, the freehand lines between the arrows 6 and 1, that is low order content. The symbols, that is middle order content because of grade 10 level. Doors and windows, there are 4 windows, 5 windows, 4 doors or 5 doors. The learner should know by now how to draw the symbols for doors, the symbols for windows. That is supposed to get full marks for, because of the fact that most of this question is low order questions. All right, he has to read through everything, what has been given, all of this, all these features, all these tables and all those type of things. That's basically the first part of it. And then the last part of this question is saying to you, on the next page, page 6, this incomplete floor plan has been given to the learners. The roof detail and then the door positions and those type of things are already been given. The window positions already been given. But remember that the size of the window being given over here is larger than what the window is. The learner should take note. So if a learner goes from side to side and draw the window in, it's going to be wrong. And of course, not everything wrong. It's just a portion of it. I will get to the memo just now. Okay, so very important that learners should know the size of the windows is larger. The doors will be to fit. In other words, if you go to the door itself, if I go to the next previous page over here, it says over here to fit. In other words, whatever the examiner is giving in the memorandum, the door needs to fit in here. Right, so now if I go to this position over here, this door, in other words, can only open up into this direction. So therefore, it slams towards that part over there. So therefore, that is the door that needs to be placed inside in this area itself. All right, so that's what you see in this regard. And the same with that one. If you go outside, I just want to see, there's a door outside. You must remember about the step, the threshold of the door. And this door should go open up into this direction. Normally, it will straight to the wall. It gives you more space in this area over here. So therefore, this will be most probably in that case. But if the learner goes the other way around, it's not wrong in doing so. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you go to the memorandum, this is the memorandum for the floor plan. Now, like I said, if I focus on the bathroom for first, okay, let's go for number 1. This is for the windows. Remember, the window size is important. Sorry, I just want to get control of this part. If the window size is wrong, if it's to go from side to side, there you can see there's a difference in line quality over there. And also, if I go towards this position over here on the other side of the window, there's a difference in line quality because the line needs to be fit in over here. So by scale, by calculation, the learners should go back to the question paper. You should go and see what the size of window, what window should be in there. Window 2, you should go to window 2. In that case, which is this one over here, and take care that the distance of window 2 has been given to him as 2 meters. So on calculation, 2 divided by, all right, now going back towards the answer sheet, what is the scale of this is 50. So 2000 divided by 50, of course, gives you the answer for what you need for that specific drawing, for that specific window, and you have to find the size accordingly. Right, so that's very important. The door will fit. Right, so you have to use a compass for that part. You can't just draw it freehand. That is 4 marks. So this is where cluster marking will count. That is 4 marks, 100% correct. So it's 4, 8, 12, and so you calculate all the windows. And the same with the doors. The doors is basically two marks, so that's 2, 4, 6, and so you carry on and check all the doors. Of course, over here, this is for a sliding door, so there are alternatives in this regard. So therefore, there's an alternative way and this way, but it all counts and calculates up to the same size, of course, amount. So therefore, that's the way that you will do that. So then you write down a mark out of 16. Learners are supposed to get full marks for windows and doors if they do the calculation correct, simply because of the fact that that is low order questions. Then the fixtures, this is number 2, this is the bathroom. Like I said, this one over here, 1, 2, 3, 4 half marks will be, in that case, go to 2 full marks. All right, so that's 2 full marks for the was closet for the English learners. For the Afrikaans learners, everything is fine, so you don't subtract the marks over there. So that is basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 for the built-in cabinet. And then over here, you've got the sink, and then if you total it up, you will get to your final mark of 22, and that gives you the fixtures in this regard over here for 11 marks. Divide by 2, that gives you 11. All right, electrical. Now, electrical, yeah, this line can go from the center. It can also go from the side, preferably to the center. Freehand line, and then the symbol must be 100% correct. This symbol, of course, two-way switch, that's what it's supposed to be. For the symbol for a wall mounted, it has to show a line over there. It must show the line over there, otherwise no symbol, no marks for the symbol. For this part over here, I just want to point out for this area, if you go to the exam, fixtures and features, for the electrical features that you see over here, it points out to you that there's 2 fluorescent lights of 40 watt. If you go towards this part over here, it points out to you a number. They're not sure because the number can differ from one area to the next area and one room to the next room itself. So therefore, in this case, for the symbol, it's the N of 40. But if the learner goes to the answer, it must be 2 fluorescent lights by 40 watts. So that must be 2. If it's written N, then it does not get the mark for this part over here. It only gets the mark. The learner only gets the mark for the symbol itself. Right, so there we go with that. Then this part over here, I just want to point out to you, in this case, there are 3 different lights, 3 different switches. All right, so in that case, one goes up there, one goes to the other part, and one goes outside. If the learner has got a line being drawn from this line towards there, it's going to be wrong because of the fact that it points out it has to have 3 switches over there, because it's going to use one of that for both these 2 lights, which is wrong, and the other one will go outside then. So therefore, that must be clearly stipulated over here. Then this is, of course, for a half a circle, and it's a switched socket that will give you the socket outlet, and then, of course, the switch over here. So that gives you a mark, and then there's, of course, the distribution board. It does not need to say dB, and that's basically for the lights. If you total them all up, you will get for electricity in total 24 marks, divided by 2 gives you 12 marks. Then, of course, hatching, it's not to say it is 45 degrees, it can be 60 degrees, but 2 lines closer, significant distance in between, 2 lines, significant distance, and then 2 lines. If it's look like mechanical, it's not going to get the marks for that. All right, so in this case, the examiner should say somewhere here that it must be SANS compliant, and it's also the correct applied. In other words, does all the walls show in some sort of way hatching? If there's one of them not showing, you have to determine 1 mark will be for all the walls. So if it's just this short little line over here, it's less than 80%. So yes, you give him at least 1 of the 2 marks for that, half a marks, of course. So it's going to be 1 half a mark, and then if it's SANS compliant, in other words, it is 45 or 60 degrees, all of them are parallel to each other, and 2 lines further, 2 lines further, it is fine. So therefore you can give him 2 marks. So in that case, you should have get 3 marks for that part over there. And then, of course, if you go to the labels, it must be SANS compliant, ladies and gentlemen. It must be between guidelines, and it must be in caps lock. Otherwise, a mark can be subtracted for that. And if everything is just freehand written and very quick and no guidelines, subtract 1 mark, but at least he knows it's bathroom tiles, courtyard paving, bedroom carpet, and then of course living area. All right, so that is basically the labels, what has been pointed out. Remember, the examiner gave the floor plan and he gave the scale in terms of that, so therefore no marks for that. It's only for the room designations in this case over here. So that includes the floor plan. I believe everything has been set out clearly. If you go to the elevations, a bit difficult in terms of high order over here on the top. How does he get this mark and how does he get that point and all those type of things? Why is this on a lower level? That is basically a little bit of more content I will show to you on this page over here. If I'm not mistaken, it's over here. There, the learner can project from that point. You can project the line upwards and he will find the line on the top over there. And of course, for that angle has been get from the exam paper. It points out to you what the angle of this roof is over here. From that point, it comes from this line that you see over here. So that is what you see in that regard. It goes back with the same angle until it reaches that point. How do I determine this point? That point over here will be determined, will be projected upwards, and if he projected this point upwards, he will get to the point of the roof over here where it intersects at that point over there. All right, so if you go to the elevations, ladies and gentlemen, a few things I want to point out. First of all, the capping that you will have there will give you 2 lines. Capping 2 lines, 2 lines, 2 lines, and 2 lines over there. That's very important. All right, then of course the gutters and downpipes. How does it show? The examiner in the exam paper pointed out clearly. This is the way you need to see the gutters. This is the gutters itself, and it points out at this view over here. Over here, you can see it points out that this is ending up at that point. There's no barge port going downwards or a windveer, because it is a type of pitch roof that you see over here. All right, so therefore the gutter will just go out. It's not perfectly in the middle of the fascia board. It's fine. It's more to the upper part of the roof. So going back to the memorandum, it tells you it's more to the upper part of the roof than what it is on the bottom part of the roof itself. All right, so that's what you see in that regard. This is your fascia board. The line has been broken by the downpipe, so therefore that's why you get 2 different marks in this regard. Over here, this is only 1 mark, although it goes through that part, it just carries on up to this point, so it's only 1 mark. This mark over here is for the vertical part of the gutter, which you will see basically over there and also on this side over there. Right, then the line has been broken. That's why you get 1 mark for that, 1 mark for this line going through, and then 1 mark for that part over there. Right, so if the learner went straight through with no differentiation between the open gap, only 1 mark for that specific line itself, because although it's 3 lines, he sees it as 1 line without compromising the downpipe. So in that case, he's not going to get 3 marks for that. He needs to know the gap over there, and he needs to show the gap over there to get the difference marks. All right, so that's very important for 1 mark or 3 marks over there. Then of course it goes down for the downpipes over here, and it will go down for the downpipes in this case over here, and over there it points out to you in the question paper, which is this line over here, this point over here. At the question paper, it points out to you this is, oh yeah, this is actually wrong. This is no diameter over here. So in fact, this is a mistake on the memo. It's supposed to be a square for this part over here, only if it's a square, all right, or a rectangle. Then he get the mark over there, because it's not diameter, it's basically squares. All right, so that is basically what you see over there. And then, so that's another mistake over there. Then over here, the vertical line that you see over here, that is for the wall, over there, for the wall over there. Then you also have got the step on the side, you've got the natural ground level, and then of course you've got your floor level, which is that one, the final or finished floor level. All right, that is for the walls. Then the third part over here is for the windows. Ladies and gentlemen, this must be double lines going down all the way up there. There must be a window sill indicated over here on the bottom. It must show double lines, It must show the opening side and the hinge side. For both these 2 points, you will get a half a mark. For both these 2 points, you will get a half a mark. We're not going to go, if it's only 1 line over there, a quarter of a mark over there. It's half a mark for both, and half a mark for both the lines over there. Then if you go to the sliding door over here, the sliding door frame, the door that opens is on the outside. All right, so this is why these lines are on top of those lines over there. And then, of course, the arrow must be visible. It must show the arrow that goes from there outwards. And then on the bottom over here, it shows the frame of the door. If it was just a normal door, of course, it will be a single line. But in the case of in the case of a sliding door, it must show a frame on the bottom as well. So that is basically what it points out in this regard. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is for the elevation. The last part of the question paper was, of course, for the section line, the section drawing of it. All right, so if we go towards this route, you will see that number 1 is basically the roof. It points out to 12 marks. Now the 12 marks comes from this mark over here, A, B, C, D, E, up to I. What I want to point out is the following. All right, A, of course, is that part over there. Now if I go to A on this part over here, that's the angle. So in other words, was it 30 degrees? Was it measured 30 degrees? And this is where the examiner will either use his transparency or maybe a protractor or a set square in checking whether that is on 30 degrees. If it is, then of course you will get the 1 mark. You will write down 1 mark over here. What is B? B is the roof sheet. It should be double lines. It must be double lines over there, because the upper part, the bottom part should be shown, and that's what you see in that regard. So that is basically at B, the half mark that you see over there. Right. Then the purlins. The purlins, the spacing of it, and of course, that is of course the spacing, this one over here, and then of course the purlins. The purlins, ladies and gentlemen, must stand up straight. I see so often that learners are drawing it horizontally flat on this part over here. Must stand on the toes of it and standing up straight. Of course, you will see with dimensions, it will work out that you will see 3 of those. All right, so that is with C. With D, the roof truss itself, that is the roof truss over here. And the roof truss, the size of this is very important. Of course, the learner starts with the roof truss at this point over here. That is the most important point for the roof truss. If the learner doesn't know about this point, he doesn't know how to draw the roof truss. Once the wall plate was placed on top of this part, the roof will start at that specific point, 30 degrees upwards horizontal. And now he goes back to the exam paper, which is this part over here. All the roof truss information is over here. It points out to you 115 millimeters. So, of course, with your scale, you're going to work with a scale of, in this case, 20. Then in that case, 115 millimeters divided by 20 will give me 5.75. It gives me 6 millimeters. All right, so going back to the memorandum, it points out that that must be 6 millimeters and this distance must be 6 millimeters. So after we started at that point, 30 degrees horizontal, 6 millimeters, and that gives you the roof truss. If that's not 6 millimeters, if it's smaller, then the learner loses the mark for this part over here. And now the extension of it, it will lose not the mark for the second part because he knows it's in line over here. You've already penalized him for the dimension over there, so that mark will be allocated if it's in line. And of course, this one over here must also be 6 millimeters. And then this last portion will be basically visible at that point. That is for D. For the fascia board, this is for the fascia board itself. The size of it is very significantly small on a scale of 1 to 20 because the size of left to right has been given in the exam paper by the examiner in this schedule that you see over here. I just want to find it over here. It doesn't show that specific one in this case over here, but no, it's not there, but I believe the dimensions will be given to you over here. Roof overhang, roof pitch, fascia board, there it points out to you 250. Right, now remember I'm working on a scale of 20. All right, so in that case, the learner should work out what will be 250 divided by 20, and in that case he should 250 divided by 20 will give him 12 millimeters. So if you go to the answer 12.5, if you go to the answer, that should be 12 millimeters or 12 to 13 millimeters from top to bottom. All right, so that's for the fascia board. Then the wall plate. That is the wall plate itself, 2 marks for that. It must have a cross going through. And then for the wall plate, the brand rings, the spacing of it. Remember, this wall plate can be enlarged for the cornice to be put onto that part, or it could be a secondary brand ring that's been placed over here. The spacing is important, that's G over there. And then of course, how does it look? Cross through, square. Then you get its 2 marks, half marks for that. So that's 1.5 mark for the brand rings itself and the spacing of it. And then the sealing board, again 9 millimeters, significantly small, just 2 lines over here for the sealing, important. And then of course the gutter, this is the gutter that goes downwards from here. That's the gutter that you will see. But remember, there's a wall over here. This is a courtyard. Going back to the exam, this part over here is the courtyard. Right, the arrow is pointing in this direction. So there's a wall over here, and it points out that this wall height at the courtyard is 1.8 meters. All right, so again, the learners should go by means of calculations, determine what the height is of this wall. It should be on the right place, and then only a portion of this gutter and downpipe will be visible over here, and that's the second mark of that part over there. All right, so that's what you have to take care of in that regard. Okay, that is for the roof. The next part of the memorandum is the foundation and the slab. This is grade 10 content. I'm not going to stand still for this part, but I am focusing on this part over here. This is the paving. All right, so it's common brick. So the hatching for this paving should not be concrete. It should be common brick, because it says exactly in the exam paper it's been paved in the courtyard itself. All right, so that is over here. It points out to you 80 millimeters brick paving. So that paving points out to you that this is not a slab that has been embedded into the wall itself. It starts from this wall outwards. All right, so the hatching is very important. If you go to the hatching over here, this is very important. And then of course the hatching for the concrete slab is over here. We will do the hatching just now, but this is the size of it, again according to what the exam paper points out to you, what the size of this part is over here. Also 80 millimeters, so that's 160 in total. So the compacting is just a significant 80 millimeters on the scale of 20, gives you obviously then 2 millimeters or so. And then from there on a 4 millimeters and 4 millimeters for the paving, which is on that part over there. All right, then this part over here, a broken line. That's why you get a line mark for this line as well as for the natural ground line on that side. This is for the vertical. On this line over here, it points out to you that this is stepping up. That's your DPC. That's a different line quality. So yeah, I wouldn't have given that line. That's for the screed. It should be a definite darker line on the top over there. And this is of course on the bottom. This line, in fact, again, I wouldn't have given this mark over here, but I will give this line, this mark over here, I will move it up to this part. Why? Because it's broken by the window sill in that area, so that mark can be moved up towards this position over here. On the inside, it goes straight from bottom to top. On here, you will see that there's a lintel been placed in, and of course the wall on that side, and then of course the last part is where this part is risen to a higher extent so that the birds can't fly in here and make nest inside here. All right, number 3 is the hatching part of it. That's the hatching over here. You can see the hatching of the concrete slab. Then of course this must go all the way around towards the other side, and make the learners aware that they don't make these things very small. They can go 20 by 20 for each block over here just to save time. They can rule it out by a freehand line over here. The examiner wants to see, does it go all the way to either side of it. Then over here, the hardcore filling on this side over here, there's also hardcore filling. That's concrete. This is paving, we said. So therefore make sure about the direction as well as the hatching type that you see over here. And then of course this carries on towards the top, hatching all the way up to the top, and then from there on you can add the hatching on this part over here and also the concrete for the lintel. Right, then the last part is the window. For the window itself, double lines, window sill, again according to calculations. And then of course this inner part can also be having concrete over here. It can also be of concrete with dots inside over here. All right, so that's the angle, and then of course the windowsill on the inside. It is not pointed that there's a windowsill on the inside, so it could have been a straight line going downwards there as well. All right, so that's what you will see in this regard. That gives you fixtures at the window itself. If I go to the question paper, there is no, if I go to the section line, there is of course The stove, there's no symbol for the stove on the left-hand side. The sink is too far out. And then, of course, the wall will be cut off at that point by means of the broken line or the line that you will see in this case over here, the break of continuity. That is the line that you see over there. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the memorandum discussion of this exam paper, the specific exam paper. And like I said to you, with this exam paper, there are some answers, and maybe you have written another exam paper, but the principle of applying when you mark with the mistake was explained to you in this paper. The principle of hatching, the principle of paving, the principle of all those questions, of what you're not very certain of, you're more than welcome to go back to this video and maybe have a look on what is going on there. Yeah, accuracy stays the main part. The learner can't just abruptly start to draw without working with dimensions and the correct dimensions. So accuracy should never be compromised. It should always be there. But yes, you can still carry on with marking with the mistake from there further onwards. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this helped you a lot in terms of answering this question, marking these questions, and helping the learners in what the examiner is looking for. So thank you very much for listening, and God bless. Thank you.